Hey, this is Joe. We have a driver's side door panel off of a Mark 5 VW GTI, and I'll tell you what happened here. The car was in an accident, and right down on this edge here there was a lot of really bad dings, and on the other end someone, because it was in an accident, someone opened the door and completely creased the edge of the door where it matches up to the front fender, and it was just creased really bad. The problem was you just couldn't take and pound out those dents because these brackets, which are used to bolt the outer door skin to the door frame, are right in the way of the dents and the creased metal on the edge of the door that matches up with the front fender. So what I had to do was take a heat gun, and these brackets were originally mounted on with a hard rubber strip, and they were bonded to the door skin to these brackets. So in order to get these door brackets off of the skin, I had to take a heat gun and a putty knife and scrape them off. That rubber has a thickness of 3/16 of an inch. So after pulling the rubber off and taking these panels and trying to mount them up to the edge of the door, the screw holes in these brackets would not meet up properly with the door frame. So what I had to do is bonding to hard rubber is really difficult to do, and I couldn't find the rubber strips, the hard rubber strips, through VW. They sell these brackets and they sell the door skin, but they don't sell the hard rubber strips. So those were put on at the factory. So what I did was I found some 3/16 of an inch wood paneling referred to as Luan. So I took those, cleaned up the brackets, and using a high quality epoxy, I bonded wooden strips with a thickness of 3/16 of an inch. And then when I put the brackets on the door skin, and as you can see, I took a 80 grit flap wheel and I cleaned up the edge of both sides of the door. Now, and then of course when the brackets were removed, I could take a body hammer and a dolly and I could pound out those dents. Over on this side, the crease was so bad and so bent that I took a grinding wheel and I removed about, about a little over a 3/16 strip off of the door panel here. Of course, then when you mount the door up against the car, there's a 1/2 inch gap between the door skin and the front fender. So what I did was I went and purchased some 22 gauge sheet metal, and I took a Dremel tool and I trimmed a little bit over 3/8 of an inch. Then when we match the door panel up to the door frame, I can take a flap wheel and very gently clear out so that there's enough gap to about 1/8 of an inch gap so that the door will open and close properly. Another problem I found was because the car was in an accident, the door panel was sticking out too far. So even after I pounded out the dents somewhat, I could not shut the door without it bending this edge really bad. What I did was I found out the door was out of adjustment from the in and out position of the door panel. So I adjusted out as far as I could. Now what we're going to do is, over on this side, I pounded out all of the dents and got it fairly flat. I'll probably have to put a little body filler in there, but very, very small amount of body filler. We fixed the brackets now, and we've test fit them up against the door skin, and they fit really flush. The screw holes, which are right here, match up perfectly with the brackets. And over on this side, I've now trimmed this metal strip of 22 gauge, and I have it clamped to the edge of the outer door skin, and we're going to come in and we're going to stitch weld this strip of metal to the door skin, and then after we get it stitch welded and set up, we'll take it out and do a fitment against the car, and then take the flap wheel and very gently grind or flap wheel the edge of this strip so that we get about 1/8 of an inch gap between this outer door skin and the front fender. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to start stitch welding this metal strip onto the outer door skin, and then when it's done we can take it out and do a fitment against the car. We can flap wheel any issues with it being too long and get about 1/8 of an inch fit, and then we can sand it, do a little body filler on the outside. Then what we'll do is we're going to take these brackets and we're going to mount them to the door frame. Then we'll pull the door skin off. We'll take a scribe and scribe the exact positions of where the wood matches up against the door frame. Then we can bond with some epoxy these door brackets back onto the door so they'll be in the exact location, so that when we go to bolt this door panel back onto the door frame, it's going to fit properly. So all the screw holes, if you notice along the edge here, there's screw holes here and there's screw holes here, and that's how you bolt the door skin up to the door frame. So we want to make sure those screw holes properly line up. 22 gauge sheet metal is very thin, and when you're stitch welding it's very easy to blow a hole through the sheet metal. I have the welder set at the lowest wire feed and the lowest temperature, and it's still, if you're not careful, you'll blow a hole right through it. So here's what I found. Get yourself a block of wood, put the tip of the welder very close to the center of the gap between both pieces of metal, and this way you can aim it right down and then just do about a second blast on the trigger. That should help. If you do blow a hole, then what you want to do after every weld, take your wire brush and clean the surface really well. Take a pair of pliers and clip the end of the MIG wire. That will keep the tip clean. And then if you do blow a hole through the gap in the metal, take the end of your torch and aim it just slightly off to the left or the right side of the gap in the metal, and do about a second blast with the MIG torch, and that should fill in that hole. A couple of tips I found after playing around with this for a while, and it seems to work really well now. The secret is keep the metal clean. I'm not using MIG, I'm using a coated wire. It has slightly deeper penetration than MIG wire, so I have to be very careful not to blow a hole through. Again, the welder's set at the lowest settings. Always keep the wire trimmed so that it's clean. Always use a wire brush to keep the surface where the flux is building up. Keep that nice and clean, and you'll get a better weld. So I'll show you when we get a little further along how it's going. We have the 3/8 inch strip stitch welded all the way across the top of the side of the door, and now we're going to take it up, fold it up against the car door frame, and then we're going to take a felt tip marker and we're going to mark the areas that we have to lightly trim, and then we can use a flap wheel to trim that to fit the door exactly. Then we'll come back and do a very light coat of Bondo on this. We'll sand back a little bit more and feather edge the black paint and try to get that matched as close as we can. This is going to be an autocross car, so this is not going to be a show car by any means. So we're just going to get it to where we can mount the door and it looks halfway decent. Autocross or solo car, occasional track day car. Here we go. Let's go ahead and do some fitting. I'll show you the progress of fitting the door to match the front fender on the left-hand driver's side.